Hey everybody, this is John Carripo. I'm up from near I live near Yosemite National Park. It's a little town called Coarsegold. That's why I don't start with Coarsegold. And I'm going to be kind of the MC today, introducing Bill Bass, Innovation Coordinator for Parkway Schools, past president of a thing called ISTE. Bill has seen everything, I guarantee, in his time, and he's here to tell you about how you can take Learning Genie, the incredible planning tool that allows people to build 5 week units in under 15 minutes. How do I know? Because I've done it. But Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you now to talk about how Portrait of a Grad can be integrated throughout your whole curriculum and how Learning Genie can be really like an accelerant for that.
Perfect. I appreciate it, and I'm really excited to be here. So, as John was saying, my name is Bill Bass. I am in a school district just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. It's the Parkway Schools. I am an innovation coordinator there, which is a totally made up title. It's just, I call myself the junk drawer of Parkway because it's all those things that need to be done that somebody needs to do, and I end up doing many of them. So today, however, we're going to spend some time together just kind of thinking about and talking about how to we embed Portrait of a Graduate, the Portrait of a Graduate work that's happening so often around districts and around the country, and really bringing that into your curriculum and really doing that through agentic AI and Learning Genie. And I'm gonna kind of talk about it broadly for a little while, and then we're going to show you some of the things that Learning Genie is capable of inside of the platform that really pulls together all of the Portrait Graduate work and the elements, the components that go into Portrait Graduate, and really pulls that into your curriculum and your lessons. Because, as John was saying, like so many times it's an afterthought. It's something that, we do all this work as a district or as a state, and it's like, oh, we have to figure out how do we make this tie? And so honestly, let's be clear, we make up things. Like we just try to figure out how to
Yes.
make it
The,
fit. And so
the
we
blue
make it up
tape
along the
plan.
way.
We just paint it,
Yeah.
we hook it together with painter's tape and call it good.
That's right. And so we can always find those connections, right? Except that if we're intentional about the connections up front, then we don't have to kind of retrofit them later. And so that's really what we're going to spend some time with this morning. So here are just some of our outcomes. We're gonna talk about the importance of the Portrait Graduate in today's educational system, and knowing that that educational system is in a constant state of change. We're going to talk about how we localize that content and the values of the community impact the Portrait Graduate work that we do. And then really thinking about how we implement the Portrait Graduate into our curriculum so that it is critical to who they're going to end up as in their futures. And that's really where we're going to spend a lot of time this morning. So welcome to this journey, and off we go. So just to get started, I want to, and I'm going to ask you to jump in the chat here for briefly, and I want you to think about, like, what do you want your students to be when they graduate? And is that different from what you want them to do? So go ahead and we're going to just real quick in the chat, go ahead. What do you want your kids to be? What are the things that you want them to be? Not what you want them to learn. And, that it's probably not a profession, but what do you want them to internalize that you have brought to them over the course of their educational journey? And so we're just going to take a moment and we're just going to let that happen in the chat.
Yeah, and Bill, in case anybody needs scaffolding, one of my favorites is I want kids to have kind of an entrepreneurial mindset.
Nice.
Um, and because I feel like even if you work in a defined career like stocks, right, there's still an element of you got to create things, you got to collaborate, you got to work with your network, you got to do all these multiple things. So for me, it was always like, hey, let's get our kids thinking like entrepreneurs, even if it's just for a side hustle.
Yeah, well, and I see we've got some things coming in the chat now. This, the effective communication skills, persons
Hmm.
of integrity, critical thinkers, and problem solvers. Like those are things that we hear over and over from our communities that we need, and our industry partners that we need from our kids. We want them to have a purpose. That's a great one. Empathetic, open-minded, grit, problem solvers, effective communicators.
Hmm.
All of these pieces are super important in, as we think about what we want them to remember, because we all remember those teachers that impacted us, and I'll remember those teachers that really brought us to become who we are now. I know mine, Rocky Graziano, my high school English teacher, he 100% made the impact, and I became an English teacher, and it's totally his fault. So as we think about those things, like what do we want them to be? The questions that I would also ask you is, would your students agree? Right now, if you went to your students and you said, ask them that very question, what do you think I, as your teacher, want you to be when you leave our institution, when you leave our school? Do you think they'd agree with the things that you just said? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. And it's not about judgment. It's just a question that I always ask is what is that what does that mean for us? And especially, how do we decide what's important because of that? And this is where Portrait of a Graduate comes in.
Mhm.
This is this is exactly what we're looking for is what do we want them to hold on to over time? And that's really what the Portrait of a Graduate work, I think, entails. And it's the way that I've approached it a lot in my own district going forward. So
And Bill, I always think of, there's a statement they say in the military, fight like you train, train like you fight.
yeah,
And I don't want to go all military on this, but the reality of it is you're not going to get here by doing lectures and worksheets all year. We've got to infuse other elements all year long.
100%. It can't it and it's not about content, because I don't know, John, I don't know if about
Yeah,
you, but
it's not subject specific, that's for sure.
and there's lots of things that I've forgotten that I quote unquote learned over my years in school because
Yeah,
because it was really content specific, right? But
right.
education made me who I am.
Yep.
And so I think that's where we think. So Portrait of a Graduate, really, when I think about the Portrait of a Graduate, these are kind of the overarching attributes. It's locally developed, it's community informed, it's about the vision of those skills, dispositions, and needs for students to have success in life. And so what it's based on varies, right? Because it's based on your
Mhm.
community. But what's great is that all of them have through lines. And we saw these through lines in the chat. We saw these things about critical thinking and problem solving and being open minded and agency and empathy. These are things that we value in small doses, but we also value in large doses. And this is where our educational systems can really help us fit in with this.
Mhm.
So when we think about Portrait Graduate, like we really need to think about this in terms of context, right? And so on the left here, this is for my own school district, the Parkway School District. Vision for a learner. That's what we call it. We don't call it Portrait of a Graduate. Honestly, doesn't matter what you call it, because it's still the elements that go in there are the same. And so just looking at mine right here, a critical thinker, an empowered learner, a connected citizen, and a resilient individual. These are what we value in my district as the things that we want our kids to be when they leave us. Now, the one
Mhm.
on the right is New York's, and this is at the state level. And so we have local level, we have the state level, and both of these are valid. And what's cool is that both of these can be incorporated directly into Curriculum Genie and Learning Genie in order to bring this to life. So whatever your context, wherever, if you are in a school district that has their own, if you're in a state that already has one adopted, if these are things that are important, they can be incorporated and must be incorporated into our everydays with kids.
Mhm.
So what does it represent? Again, it represents those skills and habits that students need for success in life. If I go back and you look at these are in New York: innovative problem solver, literate across content areas, social emotional competence. These are things that are core to who people become. And so the portrait actually represents what we value, right? What we value
Mhm.
as culture, what we value as society. And but the thing is we had to start someplace. And to be fair, just a little history lesson. Portrait of Graduate and this work really started back in the late 1900s, early 2000s, um, that when standardized testing became part of the fabric of our schools. And what we were looking for in education is we were looking for how do we go beyond that? And so the Partnership for 21st Century Skills was an organization that was really my introduction to the kind of the portrait of graduate work. And what that caused me to do is move my thinking from standardized testing to these core competencies that we want kids to establish and learn from themselves about who they are. And what that did for me is it challenged my conventional wisdom about what the purpose of education is. And that goes with me to this very day. I had a conversation this morning that was like, what is the purpose of education? And I really do believe, yes, it's to learn and all, but the portrait of a graduate really gets to the heart of those things. We need our standards, we need our curriculum, but the heart of all of this comes down to what do we want for our kids?
And Bill, I just had this thought. It would be like if you had a football team and they knew every play, but just from Xbox.
Right,
At
right. And they
some
had never
point,
done it.
you've got to
Yeah.
get out on the grass and run
Uh-huh.
around. And
Yep.
there's that balance between the content knowledge, which is, what's a fly sweep or what's a rifles blitz, which is great. It's going to win you no games if
Yeah.
you don't have the physical skills, the stamina, the experience of failing and recovering. If you don't have those elements, then you're just a guy who knows a bunch of plays. You're not really a player at that point.
100%. And it's about executing on those things, right? And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
it's
then how well do you do them? That's a third element.
the knowledge, the skill, and then the execution. All of those are components. And I really do, I see that connection and that through line through all of this work as we've gone forward. Now, John, I know we have talked many times about the four C's and just the
Mhm.
way that students um this was again my introduction to this concept of, we didn't even call it portrait of a graduate then, right? We
No.
called it the four C's. We called it, what do we need our kids to understand?
Mhm.
And so the four C's were established as this, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. These are the things that we want them to be able to do and see and bring to them, bring to every content that they go through and every learning experience that they have. We want these kind of things. And so like this was one of those things that really changed my thinking around what we needed to do in order to get there. And
And
so,
Bill, Toby
yeah.
dropped a great comment in the chat that said P21 is awesome. Ken K, his a great
Mm,
Ken K quote is, "You can't think critically. If you can't think critically about nothing, then content matters." So
absolutely.
it's the ability to process information is greater than the ability to simply memorize information. I remember in the '70s, my teacher said I would never have a calculator in my pocket.
Oh
How'd
yeah.
that work out?
Yeah. Who knew? Well,
Yep.
and Toby, to your point, like content does matter, and I think that the way that we get to that content and the way that I love that quote too. You can't think critically about nothing. There has to be context around it, and I think that the context that we think through is that are those through lines that come with the portrait of graduate work, and I think that's a really important thing. So now this is actually interesting, and John, I know you'll recognize this. When we think about cell phones and the way that people interact with phones, specifically kids,
Mhm.
and I know there's lots of conversation right now about cell phones all over the country, right, and especially with kids. But when you think about it, and I would say these are true for my own self, my phone is one of the only things that I turn around and go get if I forget, right? I mean, I can do without
Mhm.
lunch, but I
Cell
probably
is in
am.
the same category as wallet now.
Right? Yep.
Phone and wallet equal.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. But but these are the things that I think, my phone helps me. It makes me feel like I belong because it keeps me connected. It helps me fit in with the world around me. It keeps me on top of my life. It knows me. It has to know me. And helps me make the most of myself and as well as surprise me. But at the same time, if we take that a step further, kids are the same way. When we think about the educational opportunities that we're providing them and the experiences that we're defining for them, um, those experiences are the context, the content, and the path, the methods that we use to design these kind of lessons are super important. And they do all of these things as well. And so the connection between a phone and the way that we interact with each other is also the connection that we have with our kids, and the connection that we try to foster with each other. So we want to surprise them. We want to make them feel like they belong. We go to great lengths in our schools to do those very things. And I think it's really important just to keep an eye on this. Um, and I don't want to suggest that Portrait of a Graduate is the end all be all, because it is one component of all of the pieces that come
Hmm.
along with educating kids. But we do have to recognize that it's not, John, as we say, it's not about memorization. It's not
Yeah.
just about being able to recite facts.
Which is also not to say the memorization's out the window.
No.
It's the balance, it's the equity between the two. Yeah, I need to memorize times tables, right? But if I
Hmm.
can't do word problems, and if I can't use math at Costco, and I can't interact with people and make points about things, then where have I really got going?
Yeah. And it's, I mean, education is complex, right? We know this, but in many cases, I mean, and the reason that we're here today is this portrait of graduate work is one component that is often let go of in so many cases. And so I want to highlight just Battelle for Kids has been doing a lot of great work on this for a lot of years. And
Hmm.
so just in terms of process, in terms of how we get there and all that. And so and I'm not gonna dwell on this very much, but if you're looking for resources around how to create and get your portrait of graduate work started or continue, they have a great network. The Ed Leader 21 network is a great network. They have merged recently with or I guess AASA has taken it, has acquired Battelle for Kids. And so I
Hmm.
think that, the combination between the School Superintendents Association as well as this portrait of a graduate work is going to be strong, and it's going to help propel this forward. So I would just push everybody in that direction. If these are things that you are thinking about, and recognize that this is happening at lots of different levels, right? It's happening at state levels. I believe Virginia is the one that it's actually a graduation requirement that has been established by the state in order to ensure that portrait of graduate work is that schools are moving in that direction. Washington, Utah, New York, lots of different portrait of graduate work, as well as what's happening in our individual districts around the country. But when we develop a portrait of graduate, there's lots of components that need to go along with it. First of all, you have to have that community engagement. You have to be able to, because it's not just who's in the school and in the district, it's those people we all shape the educational experiences of our students. We have to think about it in terms of design. How do we design these processes? What is our path that's going to get community engagement, as well as design something that is going to be meaningful to us and something that we can actually utilize. Um, we have to develop a steering committee. There has to be people leading the charge, whether that's in a district or at the state level. There has to be somebody who's like responsible for it, so that the work doesn't get dropped in all the other things when life gets in the way.
Hey Bill, I'm going to hop in for a second.
Yeah,
I
please.
don't see this. I don't think see the slides up. I think one of us might want to change the settings. Because don't get me wrong, you were a magnificent speaker, but the visuals might
Hmm.
help.
Oh, no, actually, yeah,
Um,
I can see the slide, Joe. Maybe
I was gonna say, I think they're up. They show that they're shared.
Okay, just checking.
Okay.
Just want to
All
make
right.
sure.
Well, if y'all in the chat can't see the slides, that would be great to know. We would appreciate it. Um, so moving on then, we also need to talk. Okay, good. Thank you, Carolyn. We can also talk about key
Ooh, good.
competencies and what are the things that we really want to, kind of bring forth. And then also creating that visual representation. Both of the examples I showed you from my district and the one from New York State had a visual representation. A lot of times, weirdly, they're circles. But in these cases, there needs to be something that is recognizable, that your community can see, and it's part of just branding it. And then the most important part, so we can do all that work and have this document and have this graphic that's really cool, and it can die there. It can be a poster that's up on the wall. And that systemic integration, that last piece, making it part of your system, becomes one of those key elements that we really have to push. And that's why we're here today, to talk about how that can happen. Additionally, then it wouldn't be a presentation in 2025. We didn't talk about AI. And so, and really what that means in the era of AI. And so, as we know, AI is reshaping the job market, right? And because of that, we're moving from content memorization and recall to that problem solving, reasoning, and adaptability. We really have to think about how that shift, that is not necessarily brought on by AI, but is influenced by AI, how that shift is going to happen in our classrooms and in our daily instruction. Because, seeing AI as a companion as opposed to a replacement, teachers have to know their kids.
The analogy I like to use on that, Bill, is I'm not going to put a second grader in Photoshop.
Yeah, 100%.
It's too much. It requires a ton of background, a ton of micro skills. Now, could I experiment with second, third graders with something more like Instagram, where there's filters and there's guardrails and they're in my little world? And I'm not saying literally put kids on Instagram, but as an analogy. And I think there's a bunch of teachers that think, oh, we're just going to give kids Chat GPT and it'll be great. But the problem is you're not going to end up with the skills at that point. It's just going to be a free for all, kids writing prompts.
Right.
So that's why agentic is right, and that's why it's a companion. It's a co-pilot, if you will, not a. I'm not sitting in the back of the airplane hoping somebody else can fly.
Right. No, let's not do that. All right. So so in order to do that, though, we have to make intentional connections. And for us, for me, who cares deeply about curriculum and instruction, that really comes down to how do I incorporate that into our curriculum? And so we do it a lot of ways, through curriculum mapping, for sure. Having that component of project-based learning, that's kind of core to the work that we're doing, so that we can see some of these skills along the way. Having those clear and concise learning targets, so that kids, it's not just that we know where we're headed with our learning, but so that kids know where they're headed with their learning. And so it's not a secret, right? It's just part of what we do. Making sure that our assessments are performance-based, and then really offering that professional development along the way, so that we can bring the Portrait Graduate and those components to life inside of the work that we do every day in our classrooms, and not try to, fit it in at the end and make sure that, oh, we got this box that we can check. So, in order to go from poster to practice, we really do have to think about this in a variety of different ways. And we're about to get into a component where we want to show what Learning Genie is capable of by embedding Portrait Graduate along the way. So if we're going to take this from a poster that's on the wall into our practice, we have to make it embedded and intentional. And that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean that we have to adapt it. So many times, Portrait Graduate is like, you're a senior. Congratulations, you've done all the things. Now we're going to figure out who you are along the way. And so being able to take these things, the critical thinker, and make that at the second grade level, or at the fourth grade level, or the seventh grade level. That continuum. It's not just that we suddenly do this in high school. This is all along their educational journey. Making sure that our curriculum planning is intentional, and that we embed these components along the way, so it's not left to chance. If it's not in our curriculum, we don't know that it's going to happen.
I always use, again, another little football analogy, Bill. You don't start talking about going to the playoffs when you're a senior. That starts when you're a freshman.
Right. Yep.
You don't go,
You build
hey,
to it.
you guys, it's the last game of the season. In your last season, would you like to go to the playoffs? Wow, now I really never thought about that.
Right.
You start baking that in from the freshman, and you spend that long summer of your freshman year getting ready for the first practice, right? And you get through JV, and then you think, okay, now I'm stepping up a level. We're bringing that same kind of mindset of a multi-year success pattern to education.
Yeah, and they have to build on themselves over the years. It's you don't just suddenly appear. We also have to provide those instructional strategies, the things that are going to um, the ways that teachers interact with kids, bringing those assessment practices that are authentic and meaningful, and the experiences that go along with them, and then providing that professional development. These are the components that are going to take our vision for our learner or our portrait of a graduate from the poster that sits on the wall into our practice. And so with that, I want to we're gonna talk about Curriculum Genie now, and I'm actually going to turn this over to Gene so he can kind of begin to show us what this looks like directly in terms of how Portrait of a Graduate can be embedded in our curriculum work right across all of our grade levels. So Gene, all yours.
Right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, John. Quick introduction about who we are. We're a genetic AI team. We try to make AI really help all the teachers moving to the next AI era. So one thing we try to achieve is that help school districts, right? Teachers can meet multiple goals, not just one off. So genetic AI is different from like a AI prompt, right? Just ChatGPT or different tools. You do one task. This actually can embed a lot of different priorities, your goals into the design. So today, yeah, so we're using we're trying to demonstrate, okay, using the St. Louis, right, the school district Parkway School, the vision for a learner, similar to a Portrait of a Graduate. We want to showcase, okay, the unit we're going to do, like how we embed, right, those Portrait of a Graduate with the standards, right, with the everyday lesson, and how that can happen. So the unit will be argumentative writing, right? So where we can also localize in St. Louis, Missouri, and the standards we're picking is the ELA is for 3 weeks units, and we can showcase, okay, how exactly it will work. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
I have stopped.
Sure. Yes. So yeah. So this is a tool, right, called Curriculum Genie. If you Google that, you will be able to see a free sign up. But we are going to work on this argumentative writing. So here in the description is very important if you have a very good design. But because today we're showcasing Portrait of Graduate, so we want to feature that particularly. So as a third grader, we are zooming into middle schoolers. So here I want to showcase this is Portrait of Graduate. So I just pre-copied, right, the Parkway schools, the Portrait of Graduate into the AI, right? And also one thing we did is trying to let the AI try to understand, right, for the 12th grader, how that actually will mean to different grade band. If you already have, even this can be integrated into like K, right, into K-12, younger, like elementary school. So we pick 7th
Mhm.
grade. It's about like critical thinker, empower learner, connected citizen, resilient individual. So we give some of the expectations. So here's still like all human in the loop, right? So the grade level curriculum team can work with the school district level to fine tune. But here we give some expectation about critical thinker as 7th grader, where students can analyze relationships between ideas and evaluate the arguments, identifying bias and assumptions. I want to showcase, like, if I go to a K level, uh, um, so students will be it's easier, right? Students explore the environment by asking why and how questions, and then try different ways to solve simple problems during play. And so it's more like in the play So yeah, so we try to first of all adapt to the grade level band. Also for resilient individuals, the students reflect on past experiences, use them to tackle current challenges with resilience and adaptability. So with that, if we okay with that, we will save it, right? And we can check other priorities, right? So what we can do is select the standards. So it's a K-12 standards for 7th grade. It's obviously English language arts, so we pick ELA. So AI will try to adapt, but also we try to make it localized. So basically, the school district parkway is in St. Louis. So we'll choose St. Louis. You can quickly type. So trying to also localize. So we'll do a lot of those in the next webinar. But we are actually can show you, okay, step by step. Okay, we are weaving the standards and the portrait graduate into the unit design, but also go to each lesson. So here is about argumentative writing. Okay, so it's actually here's the unit overview. Right, in this unit, students will delve into the art of argument writing, learning to construct and analyze arguments effectively. They will explore how to gather, evaluate, and present evidence while understanding the nuance of persuasion technique. This will localize in St. Louis. But here, we do intentionally weave that into the portrait graduate, like how they communicate, and also yeah. So these are more like a lot about learning goals, standards. But I think as we are also weaving that into into the unit. Okay. Next slide, you will see like all the portrait graduate will be AI will align that, but human in the loop we can always have updates. So here's more like concepts and the guiding questions for this unit. We go next will be second step is more like 3 week about this ELA project, ELA unit. So you can see we do have the theme overview, standards and portrait graduate. So here we are able to, for the first week, we try to focus on critical thinker and the empower learner. Second week, we do connected citizen, and third week, resident individual. So spread that out. But still, like if we can see how AI is doing that, but really we are able to update that. So week one is building strong foundations. So week two will be persuasion in action, and week three refinement and resilience. That's what what this unit weekly design. So we can go next. So next will be show deeper design. So why we call agentic AI here is it's not just you do one like a lesson plan or maybe some unit idea and then develop a lesson separately, develop your the quiz separately. It's all connected. Everything is strongly aligned. That will ensure the quality is high. But also we can make sure the standards and also portrait graduates are able to be embedded as well, right? Portrait graduates you can see that as a soft skill as a standards as well. So basically, this is the first week, and we have the ELA standards, the 2 portrait graduate. But here you can see like we can always like update. For example, the second lesson is about gathering evidence. I'll use that as one example. So it will show us okay the detailed lesson activity, but also you are able to change the standards, right? Update the standards if you you want to, you have a specific a goal or skill you want to repeat, right? All the time, you can just focus on that into multiple sections. And also you can see, oh, we are weaving in the portrait graduates. So we can also like, if we want to, we can still like want to focus on 2, right? Then we're able to do that. I want to show you like view lesson. This is more like we embed edge particles, templates. But when we do that, we are able to see like, oh, the new the entire plan, right? Just how we show like how teacher can conduct this gathering evidence lesson, but with all the uh, yeah the tips for portrait graduates, how they can weave that in. So we will zoom into that a lot. So
And then this is really my favorite part of the whole thing right here, Gene, because it's basically for people who are seeing this for the first time. It's a three-step process. One, you put in your standards you want to cover, any localized items, any portrait of a graduate items. That's probably the slowest part of the build. Wouldn't you agree, Bill? Because I'm going to be very purposeful at that point. And then step two is it goes through and it gives you your weekly themes. It builds out the rubrics. And then here's step three right now. Now we're getting right into all of the details, and we're going to have UDL elements, ELL elements, and portrait of a grad elements. And this is the kicker. You guys are probably seeing that go by. It's going to make starter lecture slides. And I like to call them starter lecture slides because I'm probably going to modify them, but I don't have to sit there and think about all these different things. And it's going to have activities. And wait till you guys see what Gene shows you, how it outputs at the end. It's amazing.
right. So yeah, so literally you're able to see like, oh, this is objectives and with all the standards. But uh, we want to showcase like teacher will be supported with all different resources, right? They are able to we pull actually from PBS and but there's a long list of resources. This is actually we are pulling from. You can turn on off where you want to get.
And I love that too. Learning Genie does not just scrape the internet for rando content. Gene taught me a term down in San Diego a few weeks ago. Sometimes AI will hallucinate. And Learning Genie, in my experience, does not, because it's pulling real information from real places and it's telling you where it's coming from. So a big degree of confidence there.
Right. Yeah, but let me just, here are the slides, but we'll come back. Literally, we are able to showcase, okay, for this particular evidence gathering, we want to show like what critical thinker represented in this particular lesson, right? So we talk about we should embed right the 21st century skills in every unit, try to have a dose right every day. We should have experience that. So here's more extreme, like for this we do three, but you don't have to. Right? Usually you would do one. But I want to showcase that the critical thinker students analyze relationships between ideas and evaluate arguments, identifying biases and assumptions. So for teacher to model or to support student with supporting them critical thinker for this particular lesson. So this is the tips, right? During the research phase, guide students to identify assumptions by asking them to highlight any unverified claims in their resources and discuss potential biases with their peers. Or as students present their findings, can have them map the relationships between different pieces of evidence on a thin slide, emphasizing how each piece supports or contracts with their main argument. That's more like one real example. So a lot of teachers actually, you already did it, right? How to do critical thinker. But here we want to showcase actually we can map it and make it very intentional. So one thing.
And Gene, let me just add something real
Yes.
quick here, because those like these attributes that we're talking about critical thinker, we created this for a 7th grade classroom specific to argumentative writing, and so it has taken that attribute that we want for the vision of a learner and intentionally combine that into our lesson and given teaching tips that are going to ensure that we have the ability to kind of bring those things in, bring these components in and not leave it to chance. And I think that's the thing that so often happens inside of our classrooms is we
So
leave it.
I'm gonna plus one you, Bill. How skilled at lesson planning are most of our, say, our PE teachers or our band teachers or our CTE folks? And they may be very excellent educators and they may have a good plan, but if they're using a tool like Learning Genie, you can train them to please include Portrait of a Grad at all times. And now you have a nice consistency across your district. But without making people feel like they're being put upon or reined in or over controlled or dare say micromanaged. But you could just say, hey guys, Do your planning with Learning Genie. You can make a whole lesson in 15 minutes or a whole unit in 15 minutes. And then please be aware of the portrait of grad elements. And boom, there you go. You've got a nice layer of consistency in all subjects. It's not just the English teacher's problem or just a social studies teacher's problem. It's everybody working on it.
That's exactly, yeah. I want to show you, it can be doing batch, and after that, you can see how we organize all the standards and part of graduate attributes. But I want to also jump into demonstrate like there are slides we created just for gathering evidence. That's actually pretty awesome. So each lesson we build right in 15 minutes, they are able to generate all the teacher slides and the student-facing slides as well. So this is more like gathering evidence. Uh, what local issue do you care? How can evidence change people's opinions on important topics? So credible sources, right? In this, explore how to gather and evaluate evidence to support your arguments, identify credible sources for research, right? Understanding evidence, identify local issues. We try to make it like a really localized for like yeah, such as transportation St. Louis, um, and evaluation sources, assessing credibility, gathering, citing evidence, and making your argument stronger. And then fun facts. Did you know Library of Congress has over 168 million items, making it a treasure trove of information for researchers? And how did gather evidence change your perspective on the issue you researched? So I feel, yeah, so these are the thing the slides are actually being built. And as we speak, the whole 3 units are done. So literally, so that's what we're introduced to to teachers or curriculum team, is that they can have their idea within this part of graduates, but also they can see a system, right? So it's not just um, one by one, right? They need to gather
Mhm.
things together.
Folks can pull together a multi-week unit in, again, I've done this as fast as 9 or 10 minutes, and it's going to have all of these different elements, what I like to say, baked in all the way across the process. So teachers love it. The other one, Bill, I don't know if we talked about in the pre-show, is I've been asking teachers all across the US who doesn't like writing rubrics, and it turns out that nearly everybody doesn't like writing rubrics. And what's great about Learning Genie is it's writing the rubric for you and it's editable. So I've got
Yeah.
about 20 years in the classroom. I'm not going to take, no offense, Gene, but I'm not going to take your rubric verbatim. But oh
Right.
my gosh, Gene, thank you for not having me make the whole thing from scratch. Now I can just jump in and say, oh, we need to add these couple of little things, and I'm so much more
Mhm.
efficient, and it's saving me so much think time in my non-contract hours, which is when I do a lot of my planning.
Right. No, actually, yeah. I want to showcase is that they can have a list of all the standards and partial graduates, and so very intentional. So literally, how this is also the first time, right? So a lot of people, just like John and Bill talked about earlier, it's very difficult to imagine, right? Oh, for partial graduate, how that can be adapted for a different grade level, and then for a different grade level, how we put into everyday practice, what the teachers can do. So now, actually, AI with agentic AI is actually weave that in right into everyday lesson. Yeah, so that actually you can all access from Curriculum Genie, and it's all can be downloaded to Google Drive, the entire thing, right? The entire
And
entire
this
building. Yeah.
this is probably my favorite part. You guys watch this. It's going to make a folder for the entire unit and then a subfolder in Drive for each week of work. It's going to make Google Slides. It's going to make a Google Doc. It's eminently shareable.
Mhm. Yeah. So while it's downloading, it will go to your own Google Drive. So everything you can edit, right? Can repurpose, but you can also use AI to enhance that, right? So I want to stop sharing and go back to Bill. You have the very few slides last.
Yep.
last yeah.
Sure do. All right. So you all should be able to see my slides now. We are, so again, all of that entire process, it was efficient, but it really did, the key here is that it goes takes that argumentative writing unit, pulls in the Portrait of a Graduate throughout each one of the lessons, and you can see intentionally where they are. And so it's not, again, it's not left up to chance. So a few as we close out our time together here, I do a lot of different things, and would be happy to just kind of be helpful for you at some point in the future if that makes sense. But I do want to give John an opportunity just to kind of highlight some of the things that he's doing right now.
Sure, yeah. So my piece that folds into this with the whole process is Edge protocols, and they're reusable templates that you can use over and over again, which also benefits kids in the low cognitive load and lowering their affective filter. So if you're interested in any of those things, you can go to eduprotocols.com. Sorry, eduprotocolsplus.com/sampler. You don't even have to put in your credit card, just your email. And there's free course examples. We've got a podcast. So if the Edge Protocols part of this conversation is interesting to you, you just type in Edge Protocols podcast and you can hear. I think we've got 17 episodes now, and then we have free templates, all kinds of cool stuff. But my favorite part about this slide, Bill, is I do free lifetime tech support. So if anybody, I'll put my email in the chat as well. If you got follow-up questions that were maybe we triggered some ideas, I love talking about pedagogy.
Perfect. You want to talk about your Facebook group as well?
Yes, there's and if you don't like my bad dad jokes and my football analogies, there's 22,000 of us sharing on Facebook in this community, and you're going to see success happening every day. It's amazing. And one of the things some of our Edge protocols folks figured out is that and listen to this, Bill, because again, I don't know if we talked about this in the pre-show. We've got people that are actually building their lesson plans with the students in real time. So they're doing like KWL charts and Freyers and things like that to give kids a little background knowledge. And this is the creativity of some of the Edge Protocols teams. They are lesson planning with the students. First of all, that means it's during their contract hours.
That's great.
But secondly, and more exciting, is that it's reflecting the students' interests. And that's the power of Learning Genie. You can put a couple of things into your build. You can drop in localized things like, Bill, maybe there's a certain restaurant or a county fair in your area that the kids love and always talking about. Just fold that right into Learning Genie, hit regenerate, boom. It's totally what the kids want. And you can go on the next slide now.
Great. So we have some things coming up here in our webinar series, right, John?
Right,
Yeah, so we had a great round with Angela from ACSD. We had a pretty good round with you, Bill. I'm just kidding. I was just being nice to Angela. Next, we have coming up the amazing Matt Miller for a double whammy. Jennifer Levine talking about UDL, and then I'm going to finish it off with a lot of Edge Protocols things about how we can, kind of get off the TPT conveyor belt and start moving towards, real work, real feedback, and real growth. So there's a lot coming up in the series.
Now on this slide, what you're gonna see, yeah, I was gonna say dates and times, and we're really looking forward to this series, and we thank you all for coming today. Any last words, John or Jean?
Well, my last words are, if you keep doing the same thing, you should expect the same results. So let's try something new.